And so, if you're joining us now, welcome to the Museum of Glass. The whole glass process is beginning down on the left-hand side of the hot shop floor. And throughout the day, we'll keep showing you an image of the exact piece that we are making. But right now, we're in the process of coloring. Typically, the coloring application happens very early in the process. And you can see that's happening now. Before we get started with anything, we need to apply the color. Depending how big we want that glass to be, we will take multiple dips, however, in the glass furnace. So we have a couple different things going on in the hot shop floor today. Down on this end, we'll be working with our Kids Design Glass program. Our designer, of course, is sitting in the front row. So on our top screen, let's see our picture again, just so we can understand what's going on here in this hot shop floor. But the glass makers are each doing one specific thing right now. So notice we begin the glass making process with the parts, making the parts. Now down on this left-hand side, made this long tube of glass, and this will be the flag pole. Down in the center of the hot shop, we are creating the flag that will go on top. Now notice that the colors right now look red and orange, but again, that's not gonna be their true color. The true color will be coming back once the glass is properly cooled down. But on our top screen, we are gonna get an image of the piece we are creating for our Kids Design Glass program. So on our top screen, let's go ahead and get our image. Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to the museum this wonderful day today. We are going to be working on our Kids Design Glass program, and on our top screen we have a couple different rules, but we do have the designer Quan down here sitting in the front row, and on our top screen we're going to show you exactly what he drew, and the Museum of Glass crew is going to be making this piece. So as we see toast in a boat down here, right now we are working on different processes. But notice, to make one of these, we will begin by making all the parts separately and then joining them all together to give us our final finished piece. Now as this is just going on down here on this end of the bench, but down on this right hand side, we do have the Hilltop Artist students teaching glass making and how to make glass flowers, these paperweights. Now, typically, these classes tend to be sold out, but I do want to give you a heads up that we do have an open slot at 10:45. So here in a few, once they're done with this, we still have an open class. If you are interested learning how to work with glass and creating your own glass flower here today, here right now, please talk to our front desk. We can fill you in, and you can come down to this hot shop floor and learn to work with glass with our wonderful Hilltop Artist students. So we are adding the small details to our flag down here. And what Ben's doing is he's using a torch called the hot torch. Now that's the hottest piece of equipment there is on this hot shop floor, but essentially he's using a thin glass rod and he's using it as a pencil where he can draw on the surface. On contact with that flame, it's gonna melt it, and that's how we can draw different words, or in this case, just create details into our flag. Remember that we are gonna be making 2 of these pieces, one piece for Quan to take home, and one for our own collection that will later get displayed. So down on this right-hand side, the Hilltop Artist students have just placed the last flower into this, what we call an annealing oven. The annealing oven is the oven that will bring everything back to room temperature. So even the boat that we created today, the toast in the boat, our kids design glass, will go through the similar process of cooling down. It typically will range about 24 hours, but depending on the thickness, that can vary. Have one extra one thing that I was thinking when I announced it. Fine. Other than that, everyone else has. So let me announce it. I'll just kind of push it towards them. And I'll let them know that within 10 minutes, if they're done out there within 10 minutes, that sound good about? Now, down on this right-hand side, we have the Hilltop Artist students teaching paperweights. Now, if you're interested, we do have an open slot now available, and if you take this within 10 minutes, we can have you down here at the Museum of Glass hot shop floor, and you can make your own flower. You can take it home. You can choose the colors. You can have one of our wonderful students like Mai Sean down here, a high schooler from Stadium High School, which is located just 10 minutes down. Mai Sean is a senior this year, and if you're interested in having Mai Sean teach you how to make these glass flowers, well, right now is your chance. We do have an open class available, and if you're interested, again, you have to get it within 10 minutes so you can talk to our front office if you're interested in being part of this. Our little Toastman, however, in the center has been transferred to a different rod, and we're beginning to work on the opposite end to kind of clean it up, ensure that he's ready to meet the boat that he will sit on later. Down on that left-hand side, we've already made the flagpole and the flag. They're staying nice and warm in our garage, about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's that perfect temperature that's not going to allow the glass to get too hot and begin to sag, but it's not too cold where it will crack. So it's that perfect temperature to keep them till we are ready to bring them out. So for our audience, let's get the image of our designer's Kwan's toast in a boat, just so we can all understand what's going on and what we're gonna be building onto. When we're making a piece like this, however, we make it in steps. So we might make the flagpole, and the toast before we begin to work on everything else. So the parts that we've already made are sitting in our garage, and they're staying nice and warm. Now, as we begin this next process, I do just want to introduce you to some of the equipment that we have around here in this hot shop floor. We came out where we're exiting with solid color. To create the boat, we're going to be using solid color instead of crushed up glass. Now, for the other parts we made earlier, we were just rolling into crushed up glass, what we call frit. To make color in glass, we're adding different metals from the periodic table of elements. Different colors or different metals will produce a different color, and the color comes in a bar form originally. This is how we create a nice dense layer all the way around. Depending how big the piece is going to be, we might take an inch or two of this bar, but if we really wanted to, we could use 2 or 3 bars. That would just dictate the density of the color. If we then break this up, grab a hammer or some sort, and we break it up, we eventually get with the frit. And this is what we were using to color the flagpole, the toast, and the flag itself. This time around, for the boat, we want to use solid color, so we have a nice dense color. So we placed a little bit of solid color inside of the garage, and we begin to pick that up. We gathered a little bit of clear glass to act as a stabilizer. Down on this left-hand side, we are beginning the boat. Now, Gabe down here has solid color, and he's working with that solid color, ensuring that the heat is all the way down to the center. At that same time, we now have Sarah gathering glass, but this time on a different rod, what we call a blowpipe. She is gathering glass out of our glass furnace that holds approximately 1,000 pounds of molten glass. Now, to gather glass, we are dipping the rod inside the hot bowl of soup that sits behind here. It's about 2,100 degrees, or about the same temperature as molten lava. So to gather glass, we will dip the rod inside of the pot that we heat up. By turning, we can then control and gather the glass. If we want to apply color, it typically is added very early in the process, how we see here. But after we've applied the color, we'll go back to the furnace to take another layer. So if we're going to make something large, something big, just means we take multiple dips inside the furnace. At this point, however, Sarah's just been rolling back and forth on the steel table to shape the glass. She's preparing it for an air bubble. When she's ready, she will blow a little bit of air through the blowpipe and then place her finger over the hole. At this point, we have pressurized the pipe, and the air wants to expand, so it appears a small air bubble towards the tip of the glass. And now we are ready for color. With that starting bubble, Gabe will get the solid color nice and hot. We will then place that solid color right on the top of that bubble, and then Sarah will spread that color nice and evenly around the bubble so we can create a thin layer of color. When we gather that clear glass on the surface, it will magnify it, make it look like the whole piece is that solid color, but in reality, it is not. On our top screen, we're gonna place an image again so we can understand what's going on for our visitors that are just joining us in the process that we are now in. And this is the coloring application. We see Ben bringing over that solid color, so we'll now snip it free. And this is very important. It's very important that that solid color goes on evenly, because if we don't, then we will have different densities of color throughout our boat, and that's not what we want. We want a nice, even base to begin with. And to do that, Sarah will use tools, but also the steel table we call marvering, the marvering process. We're getting that name because traditionally these steel tables you see around the hot shop were made out of a solid slab of marble. Nowadays, however, it's been switched with the steel counterpart. It does the same job, however. One of the major reasons why marble was replaced from the marver was because it does crack. If you gather a lot of glass and you drop it right on top of marble, it will crack a slab. And that's not what we want. It also is very expensive, so nowadays we use the steel counterpart. But on a rarer note, you might find someone that has an actual little slab of marble. Although it is rare, it is possible out in the glass community. So down in the center, we're beginning the, or, ooh, looks like the boat went away right now. But down in the center, we were working on the boat. But right now, we're working on the flag that will go on top of the flagpole. Here in a little bit, I'll show you the image on our top screen so we can all understand what's going on. But we are making another flag down in the center. Down on this left-hand side, we're gonna begin to make the boat. We've already blown a small air bubble. We've already applied color. Sarah's now letting that bubble cool down. And the reason she's letting it cool down is for a couple different reasons. A, she can have the ability to gather more glass. The colder that core is, the more glass we can gather. And B is we can stabilize it. We can just maintain more control over the glass that we gather on that top layer. Once Sarah is good and ready, when she feels like that core is cooled down sufficiently, she will enter the furnace for another layer so to give us more material to work from. Yep, just letting it sit, making sure it cools down naturally. A lot of glass ones, a lot of So down on this right-hand side, we have a completely different project. We have our Hilltop Artists students. Hilltop Artists is a nonprofit organization aimed to help out the youth in our local neighborhood, started by Dale Chihuly back in the 90s. Now, we do have open slots available if you're interested in working with glass, making your own glass flower here today at the Museum of Glass. You have an opportunity. We do have an open class at 10:45 and then some later after 2 o'clock. And you can meet one of our wonderful students, Julian, down here, who is a sophomore at Wilson High School. So our second flagpole entered what we call the garage. The garage is a temporary place where we can store the glass and keep it warm. That 1,000 degrees is hot enough to keep it from cracking, but not too cold or not too hot where the glass will begin to move. Now, for those of us who are joining us, again, my name is David, and if you have questions at any given time, you can raise your hand or shout my name, and I'm more than happy to come over and talk about glass or about really the glass process that we're seeing here today. We've already applied a thin layer of color, but we also want to give it a little bit more texture, a little bit more wow. So to do that, we are rolling into crushed up glass on top of that color layer. This is just going to give us a different density of color all the way around. And depending how dense we want this color layer to be, Sarah can take a handful of rolls in the crushed up glass. Again, that's very similar to what we saw earlier happen, that solid color, but this time that solid color has been crushed up to a dust form. So this shape that we have, this iconic cone-shaped design, it's the actual hot chops. Now, from the outside, it looks completely different than the inside. But the reason we have this cone shape is due to Tacoma's early history. Tacoma was founded on a logging town, and where we are located, the Foss Waterway. There used to be, there used to stand what we call beehive burners or wigwam burners. It was a place where they would burn excess wood. Now, these cone-shaped burners are long gone, but this museum was built in that memory that we see. So in about 10 minutes here, one of our wonderful docents is going to be giving a tour of the gallery. So if you're interested in touring the rest of the museum and what we have to offer, again, at 11 o'clock, we will be giving a docent-led tour. They're very knowledgeable of the museum. They can practically answer any question you might have about any of the pieces you see out in the gallery here today. But down on that left-hand side, we are still working on the boat right now. We want a lot more glass, so if we want to make something big, we just got to layer it. We've applied color to give it another texture, another layer, another just extra glass, you know. Now, our bubble right now may not look like a boat yet, but we are already beginning to do some of the early work on it, like create a little constriction. That constriction that we've just created will be the break-off point that we'll use later on. Although there's still a lot of shaping to be done, we have already created a section where the glass can be broken free. So for those of us who are wondering exactly what we're making again on our top screen, we have the image of Toast in a boat. Well, we've established our boat shape down in here in the center. Now, remember that that's not the true color of the glass. For a good majority, it's going to look red and orange, but its true color will be coming back as the glass cools down. So we won't see that true color essentially till another 24 hours from here when the glass cools down in the annealer. However, before we begin to add any parts, we will create a nice flat spot towards the very top. So we created a flat spot and we transferred our piece to a different rod, and now we have our boat. We will open the opposite end and really begin to shape that and design it the way that the boat looks like. So on our top screen, let's get a toast and a boat so we can understand what Ben is going to be doing next. So we've established the bottom portion of our boat. Now what's left is to work on the top portion where the toast and the flagpole and essentially the flag will be located at. So on this end, Ben's going to concentrate the heat towards that very bottom edge, and we'll see that happening here in this hot shop towards down that center. Notice that a good majority of this piece is already almost sticking out of the chamber. He's essentially only heating up the face of the glass since that's where what we're going to manipulate next. And again, if you have questions or wondering about our drawing, Quan is walking around the hot shop floor. He is our designer, and he is the winner of our kids design program this month. We will make 2 of these pieces. However, one Quan will take home, and then a second one we will keep here in our collection. And of course, we will be displaying it throughout or later on in its life. We've heated up the end, and this time around, we're using a pair of trim shears to get rid of excess glass. Again, we just want really what's on the bottom half, and we have essentially the start of our boat here. Some of the trim that we have, the excess trim, we are going to reuse in our piece. So when the glass is completely done, it's not going to shrink. Glass shrinks less than 1%. Pretty much rarely noticeable how much it shrinks, unlike ceramic or some other materials that do shrink when they're fired. For our case in this glass, it's not going to shrink. Once we're done, we'll set it into the needle and it'll slowly cool down. But we still have so much work ahead of us before we get to that step. For our new visitors, however, I do want to take a step back and really introduce what we're working with down here. And after this, I'll show the image again of a toast in a boat, but I do just want to take a second and talk about what's going on down here and the equipment we hold. So down here, our boat, it's hard to believe, but our boat within an hour ago was sitting inside this furnace at a molten state. Here at the museum, we have two furnaces, both holding approximately 1,000 pounds of glass. And on our top screen, we're seeing a diagram of this furnace. Essentially, when I open this door, we can see that ceramic pot inside. Again, it is about 2,100 degrees, or about the same temperature as molten lava, and it's always turned on. This furnace is never turned off ever in its life. It goes without holiday breaks or weekends off or vacations, time off, none of that. It doesn't take anything. It's always working. Very similar to the furnace, we have the glory holes that we're entering. These chambers are used to reheat the glass. Remember, when it exits the furnace, it immediately begins to cool down. And if we want to continue to work with the glass, we will have to enter one of these chambers to get the glass hot again, continue working with it. All this equipment that you see down here is powered by natural gas. And on our top screen now, let's switch over to our toast in our boat. We can understand what we're making right now. We already have our boat as we see in our drawing. Again, we're gonna get toast in a boat up on our top screen so we can understand what the glass makers are doing. But a good majority, like the flagpole, the flag, and the toast, we've already created. They're sitting in our garage right now as we speak, staying nice and warm. Here in a little bit, we'll begin to bring out one by one, but we're gonna start off with the first piece that's gonna be attached. Notice we're beginning to see the true colors of the boat also, but remember right now the color's still a little on the darker side. It's totally fine. Once the glass has properly cooled down, then we will see the true color of our boat. So if you're wondering what's going on right now, at this point we're letting the boat, we're keeping it nice and warm. And down on the left-hand side, our gaffer, Ben, he's gonna be bringing this whole toast in a boat together. Right now he's creating a seat, a flat seat that we can place the toast on. So on our top screen, I know we just had this image, but let's get toast in a boat on our top screen so I can explain how we're gonna bring this together. If we try to put the flagpole and the toast inside right now. They're just, you're not going to be able to see them. So to put this together, we're going to put a seat that will go across the front on which we can set the toast and also our flagpole. And that's how we're gonna bring that together here. It's gonna happen in real time. We see Ben right now working on that portion right now, and here in a little bit we'll bring it out and we'll attach it to our boat. Again, our artist Quan, he is walking around the museum right now. Once he comes back in, we'll introduce him once again, but we do have the designer in-house. So we have Quan, our designer, sitting in the first row here. If you want to ask him questions about what we're creating here, I will read a little statement that he did post, though, however. But right now, by the way, Quan, we're going to be adding a little seat on which the toast will sit on. We're going to do that here in a little bit. Now, some of these quotes, again, Quan had wrote. So basically, it's a toast in a boat. We call it boat. So Quan had come to the museum in October with this class on a field trip, and in any class that comes to the museum, we always send their teachers off with the official Kids Design glass tip. His teacher had actually made some time for them in class where they can sit back and draw. And so Quan drew his piece in his 4th grade class with his fellow peers and students. So at the same time that this is going on down here in the center, down on this right-hand side, we have something unique going on. Now, the Museum of Glass rarely ever teaches glass making, but at the end of the month this year, we've decided to open our doors. We still have some open time slots. If you're thinking about working with glass, if you've ever wanted to have the opportunity, we are teaching short introductions to glass making, and you can create your own flower. You can pick out the colors. We have these amazing students down here. I'll introduce Maishan Cabrero, the big boss man. Maishan is a senior at Stadium High School. If you want to meet the rest of the crew like Maishan and Jack Spitzer down here, Jack is a fellow student at Wilson High School that also have one of the Hilltop Artists Glass program. Hilltop Artists being a non-profit organization aimed to help out the youth. So all these students go different high schools, but yet they're all friends, and glass blowing has really brought them together. And if you're interested about glass making and learning about Hilltop and creating your own flower, this is a great opportunity. We still have some classes open at 2 o'clock, at 2:45, I believe. And these classes are selling out quite fast. So if you're interested in learning to work with glass, please sign up with our front desk to have the opportunity. Do we have any questions from the audience? Any questions about what you're seeing here today? Right now is a good time, but if you don't, you can sit back, relax, enjoy the museum, of course. As we begin to arrange the seat that our toast will sit in down here, we'll check in with Jack Spitzer down here. Again, we still have some open slots available now. Jack is a student, a sophomore at Wilson High School, and he does after-school glass making. And he's taking a layer of glass. Now, it's hard to believe, but our boat started in a very similar process. Down in a furnace, this furnace holds about 1,000 pounds of glass. And we can see that the glass is right on the end of the rod, and it's very important to turn the rod. And we see that on this piece down here, Gabe has to constantly turn the rod to keep the boat on center. If he stops turning, the boat will begin to fall and drag to one side, and that's not what we want in this case. So Sarah on this left-hand side has the toast. She's exited out of the garage and she's already begun to preheat the toast. We are going to be attaching it to the seat we have created. To ensure that it sticks to that seat, we're using a hot torch. That little torch that you see there packs a punch, and it's the hottest piece of equipment on this hot shop floor. Now, that torch is so hot that it can boil the glass and even boil away the color that we have. So we're careful not to overexpose the glass with that torch, but just with a little bit of use, it can become like glue. So when it sticks to the glass, it will fuse on forever. So this is going to be the move where the toast will meet the boat, and they will be fused forever together. Now the first portion has been added on our top screen. Let's get our image again, our toast in our boat, so we can see what's next. Now that we have applied the toast to his seat, the next step is to add the flagpole and eventually creating the flag or adding the flag. Now we're still a little way out from that. Ben is going to do a little bit of adjusting before we move on to any other step, ensure that we like the position of the toast and clean up any residue that might be left behind from that transfer rod that we broke it free from. To stabilize our mast, that pole that's on the center, we have added a little bit of clear glass on the very bottom, a little piece. That's just to stabilize the mast so it's not moving too much, especially when it's done, and it has something to connect to. And it's these design small changes that go added to the piece. Of course, the drawing is flat, but when we bring it into the 3D, the glassmaker's duty to make some arrangements to ensure that it looks accurately like the image. So as we're working on our toast on a boat here, I do want to take a second and start from the beginning, introducing the equipment that we have and where this piece started and began from. About an hour ago, this boat was sitting in our garage, or in the furnace where all the glass is being pulled out of. Behind this door lies a pot of hot glass. Here at the museum, we are melting about 100 pounds of glass, and it's sitting about 2100 degrees, or about the same temperature as molten lava. To gather the glass, we will use one of these rods. The rods are preheated before we use them, as you see down here. Bring them up to around 800. We're looking for a little red, a little color on the very tip, which will allow it to stick to the glass. So when we're entering the furnace, we're creating a thin layer of glass, creating a small amount. If we want to make something large, something bigger, how we have our boat, we will just have to take multiple dips into the furnace. For this boat, we used about 3 dips, so we went into the furnace 3 different times to give us the amount of glass necessary. Once that is complete, we create a bubble and we begin to expand that and blow that out with teamwork. In this case down here, our bubble was cut in half after it was transferred, leaving us with that boat as shape. Now, we've been using a handful of different tools to complete this, like using corks, newspapers, and all these different tools. Now, we've added the flag to our mast, and that essentially completes our boat in a toast here. Well, we began this piece at 10 o'clock here at the museum. Our, our designer down here, Quan, is closely standing by. Now, of course, before we put this piece away, we need to get the thumbs up from Quan. Now that Quan has given us that thumbs up, it is time to break free our boat, our toast in our boat. So on our top screen, let's get an image. Let's get that image so we can understand what we just saw right now and what's going to be the future of this toast in a boat. This is one of two. One of these, Quan will be taking home to his house. He's going to be able to look at that piece every single day for the rest of his life, which is such amazing here. An opportunity that we create here at the museum. However, if we break this boat off right now, it's gonna break. It will get too cold too fast. So if we want to prevent it from breaking, we will have to slowly cool it down. Sarah down here has suited up in this heat protective layer, Kevlar gloves, and a Kevlar jacket. The next step we will take is to set it into the annealer. The annealer is the oven that will bring it back to room temperature. It is currently sitting at 920 degrees, and it's going to be the home of our toast in a boat for the next 24 hours to slowly cool down. So we are going to be breaking it free down in this annealer, this number 2 or 3. Number 3. So when we break this piece off, if you're standing here, you're going to get to see a really good view of our toast in a boat. Right now, it's sitting about 920 degrees also. So this is the final last heats that we take. We're ensuring that the boat is no longer moving. It's stable at this point. However, we want the heat all to be located at the point of contact, the punty. And just like that, success, the first toast in a boat here at the museum. Can we give our team a round of applause? And not to mention, can we give Quan a round of applause for his amazing drawing? Now, any child 12 and under can be part of this Kids Design Glass program. So if you have no people, let them be part of this program, and they too can take home one of these beautiful pieces and have a collection of their own in their home. We're gonna be making another one later today. One of them will be ours, and one of them will be going home with Quan later on. Just back in October, Quan came to the Museum of Glass with his classmates on a field trip. They took home a Kids Design Glass official entry and they designed it in class, which leads them here. Yes, we are going to continue here. Yeah. The crew's going to take a photo with Quan, and after that we will resume. So right now our crew is going to take a photo with Quan, with our artist. After that we will be resuming the glass making. So here, within a few minutes, we'll go ahead and continue the glass making process. We just asked for a couple of minutes for our artist. So as the photos are happening down on here, again, we are going to be resuming here shortly. But I want to talk about what's going on down here. We have none other than the Hilltop Artists students. Hilltop Artists is a nonprofit organization aimed to help the youth. This program was started back by Dale Chihuly back in the early 90s, and to this day, it is still continuing. Their hot shop, their main hot shop, is located about 15 minutes away from the museum at Hilltop in a local middle school called Jason Lee. That is where their main hot shop. But Hilltop also has expanded to another hot shop at Wilson High School, where two of the Hilltop Artist students you see here are part of that program. We have Jack Spitzer and Julian Goza down here. They're both sophomores at Wilson High School. And if you're interested in learning to work with glass, if you're interested, if you ever wondered how it is to work with the hot glass, today is your opportunity. We still have a few slots available around 2 o'clock. So if you want to have the opportunity to come down to the world famous Museum of Glass, work with these local students from the Hilltop Artist Glass program, we do have some slots available. We're almost sold out, but we can squeeze in a few more for today. And if you're interested, please talk to the front desk about filling up a space, because again, we are almost nearly booked. Very similar to our toast, if we leave the glass out here, unfortunately it'll get too cold too fast. It can break, a crack, and even explode. Now, to prevent it from breaking, we'll slowly cool it down. We can see the team down here has laid the flour on a small patty. This patty is gonna give it the ability to stand. But unfortunately, if we leave it out here, it'll get too cold too fast. So if we want to keep this flour, prevent it from breaking, my Sean will have to set it into the annealer. This time around, however, we're going to be using a separate annealer, the one with the green number 4. Very similar to the earlier one we used to set in our toast in a boat. It's sitting at 920 degrees, and it will cool down for the next 24 hours. Now, the students always get asked, how do you guarantee that you get the one that you created? Well, my Sean here has mapped the inside of the annealer so we can ensure that all our visitors will get the one that they created. And again, we do still have some open slots available later in the day. So as we begin some of the parts for our next Toast in the Boat, again, I do want to begin by introducing myself. My name is David, and I'm going to be your MC here today. If you have questions at any given time, feel free to raise your hand or shout my name. I am more than happy to answer any questions. However, we are going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to introduce some of the equipment that we have here and how a glass piece begins. Now, all around this hot shop, we have furnaces. Two very special furnaces we have here are holding glass. We can see my Sean exiting the furnace on this right-hand side, and that is hot molten glass, by the way. Down in the center, we see Gabe, or down on that left-hand side, we see Gabe working on a massive glass right now. He is going to be creating a flag that will go on our mast on our Toast in a Boat later on. Again, we are going to be working on some parts that we will use later in the day. Sarah down on this left-hand side has used the other furnace that we have here. With that massive glass, she will begin to pick up color. Now, by rolling in crushed up glass, we can see we're picking up a thin layer of color. And if you're wondering, well, how color is added to clear glass, well, you're seeing that process happen now. We are setting the hot glass right into that bowl. By rolling, we can pick up a thin layer of color. Depending how dense we want that color layer to be, Sarah can take one roll or she can take several rolls. That will just dictate the density of that color. Now, the rods that we use here in this hot shop floor are made out of stainless steel being a very poor conductor of heat. So the heat is not transferred all the way through the rod. When the rod, however, does begin to get a little hot, we'll use a pipe cooler, which is cold water that we run on the surface of that rod. But if you take a close inspection, notice that the glass makers only keep their hands where the rod is still shiny, where you can still see that stainless steel. Towards that tip, that rod becomes dull gray and black, and we're not placing our hand in that darkened area. Rather, it's right directly behind that. And we can see Sarah rolling on another layer of color. The color itself is made by adding metals from the periodic table of elements. Different metals will produce a different color. In this case, red and pink are made from adding gold, but if you like green glass, well, chromium and iron is the metal we add to create that color. Blue glass, how you see around the hot shop, we add cobalt. Again, it's specifically metals that give us different colors, and then the density is dictated by the amount of rolls. Now, Gabe, the gentleman with the black hat, he was sitting down. He was working on a triangle piece of glass. Now, it's gonna be red first of all, by the way, but for a good majority, it won't look like that red color due to the heat. The heat will always distort the true color of glass, make it look red and orange. But again, that won't be the true color. We'll see that color once the glass has been properly cooled down. But that little piece, that little triangle piece that we created will be the flag that goes on the mast of our toast in a boat. So down on that left-hand side, Sarah needs a little bit more glass to continue to work on her piece. So by letting it just cool down by rolling back and forth, the ambient temperature is going to cool down the glass. If we want to make something bigger, something larger, we need to take multiple dips. So in this case, Sarah's letting that core cool down, which will give her the ability to gather more glass, but also maintain more control. For the next clear layer that we add, we just want to have enough clear glass to protect our color. So not a lot, you'll notice that we'll get rid of most of the clear glass that we add. Hey, Kristen. Now, as Sarah enters the furnace down in the center, we are going to break free our little flag that we will use later on in the process. But down here on this left-hand side, we just want to protect our color. And again, this is hot glass that Sarah is pulling off. Eventually, she's going to snip all that clear glass right off. So the glass on the table, that is the glass that we actually recycle here at this museum. Any glass that ends up on the ground will be thrown away, but if we throw the glass in this specifically marked clear bin, this is what will be reused. At the museum, we use less than a 20% recycle mix. And the reason we do that is because every single time you remelt recycled glass, you get a poor quality since you're melting out some of the stabilizers that they use. Now, the glass that we melt here comes in a pellet-like form, and it's soda lime glass produced or about 45 minutes north of Seattle, called Spectrum Glass Nugget. So it's a local glass that we are melting here at the museum, but the glass that we're melting here is specifically formed for offhand making, which means it stays at a molten state for a longer period of time. Our furnaces are literally filled with hundreds and hundreds of these small pellets that melt overnight. So once one of our furnaces has about 400 pounds left, or 600, we will stop using it, increase the temperature, and begin to fill our furnace. And then later that day or the next day, it should be ready, filled up with more glass. If you're wondering what Ben is up to down here in the center, with the glass that we have, we will create the toast that we will use later for our boat. For some of us who are here, and I know we have a lot of people that weren't here for the first portion, but on our top screen, we are going to show you an image of a toast in our boat. Now, our designer just left the museum, but we do need to create two of these pieces, one for the child to take home and one for us, for the museum. So right now, we're going to begin to work on some of the elements that we need to put them together. We've already created the flag. Right now, we are in the process of creating the little toast that will go inside the boat. And notice to do this, Ben will just use different tools, different techniques to ensure he can create that little toast. No, with the eyes and the nose to create that, Ben will just be using a thin layer of glass to draw it on. But that will be happening later. As of right now, he is going to manipulate that to look exactly like the toast we have. So down here on this left-hand side, I don't want to leave you in the dark. So what's happened down here is, believe this or not, but this panel of glass was a cylinder a couple hours ago, or a day or so. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but back in the olden day, if you wanted a window, if you wanted a plate of glass, you have to go to a glass blower. The glass maker would make a cylinder for you. They would cut the side of it, cut the bottom off, and then begin to heat it back in an annealer. And then as it heats up, it will begin to unfold. We do have an amazingly talented crew out here, but we also have one of the best cold workers in the country, Kristen Elliott down here. Kristen is a professional cold worker, and she's the one that cut the cylinder on the side and cut the very bottom. This will now be going to the back to be cleaned up, but we can see that beautiful pattern that was made by the Museum of Glass Hot Shop crew. The process that they make windows now is floated glass, where they make the glass, where they float the glass on a bath of tint, and the glass will float on the surface. But nowadays, do we have any questions from our audience? Any questions about what you're seeing here today? I know there's a lot of different things that are going on in the hot shop. We are teaching classes down on that right-hand side. Could we flatten out a wine bottle? You know what's funny? These wine bottles that we have right here, if we really wanted to, we could technically cut the side of it, cut the bottom, and unslump this, make it to a flat sheet, if we really wanted to. Oh, any glass. Oh, yes. So it depends how you do it. Even if we don't cut it and we heat this bottle back up, it will just pool in like a little bubble. Yep, and it will just completely flatten out. So when you're doing this, it's very important that you're always watching, because once the glass begins to collapse, it begins to collapse. And I know this from personal experience, because I've tried to flatten out a sheet before, or a bottle, and man, 1 second I was there and the next second I wasn't, and by the time I opened the annealer, it was just a pool on the bottom. So you have to constantly watch it, because once the glass begins to move, it will begin to go. Yep, at some points we will stop and we'll just tear it apart. The furnace that we're pulling the glass out of is about 2100 degrees, or about the same temperature as molten lava. The glory hole behind me is what we use to reheat the glass. When it's sitting out here, it becomes cold, and if it drops below 900, it will crack. So to continue to work with it and make it more malleable, we will reheat it back in that chamber. Depending how long we stay in that chamber, depends how long we can work with it. Typically, the glass making process is maximizing the time you have here with the heat that you're given. So notice we'll constantly reheat the glass up so you can continue to work on it, make it more malleable. And that's what the glass blowing process is really all about. Now, if you're wondering how color is added to glass, originally we were rolling into crushed up glass, but I do want to take a second and talk about what's going on down on this left-hand side. This is a different way of coloring glass, and this will create a dense color layer rather than a spotted color look. Sayuri down here on this rod has gathered a little bit of glass and picked up a bar of solid glass. Now the bar of glass is coming to us from a manufacturer. Depending on what we're making, we can use a full bar of color, or we can use a little bit. That will dictate the density of the color. However, for the good majority of the time, the bar and the color will look red and orange, but again, that's not going to be the true color of the glass. Due to the heat, it will make the color look like it's red and orange, but again, that is not the true color. Sayuri, now that she's really got that solid color nice and hot, we're going to drop it right on top of that bubble. That is solid color that we are adding on the top portion. What Sarah is making is going to be the start of our boat also. But now that that color layer is on there, before we begin to do anything, we're going to ensure that that color layer will be applied evenly all around our bubble. So when we blow out our boat, when we have our boat, we have a thin layer of color all the way around, a nice good density. So Sarah will use different tools to ensure that that color is pushed evenly. For our toast, we do need to add some facial features. So on our top screen, let's get our image of our toast in a boat so we can understand what we're gonna be doing next. So Ben is gonna be using a thin layer of colored glass, black glass. It's essentially a glass pencil. We're gonna be using a torch called a hot torch. It's gonna melt on contact, and with this little pencil, glass pencil, we can draw all the facial features we just saw on our toast, like the eyes and the mouth and the nose. So very carefully, Ben will begin to use that hot torch and draw on those facial features. Down at that same time on the left-hand side, we're still working on the beginning of the boat. Oh, yes. I can go into detail here in a little bit, but yes, you might come in tomorrow and you might see someone in charge. Type of project, really who wants it? Who wants it? Everyone has different ideas, different reasons. The team will root in a specific group who wants to take it. So here in the hot shop floor, notice that there is a hierarchy going on. Down on these two ends, we have Ben. Now Ben is sitting down in the center of the hot shop, and he's considered what we call the gaffer. The gaffer is the person in charge, and he's calling all the shots. He's gonna be the one that's gonna bring everything together. Well, we're in good hands because Ben's been working with glass for over 25 years. Down on the left-hand side, Ben has instructed the glass makers down here, both Sarah and Gabe, to the process that they want. Now, it could be simple as the amount of color or the roll, the color that should be applied. Ben might say, I want 2 rolls in that color and that's it. And that's what the glass makers will do. All these are considered assistants, but when we begin to work on the center, the jobs do change up a tad bit more. So down on the left-hand side, we're going to be creating the mast that we use, and again, we're creating the boat as we speak. But as this is going on, we did have a question about commissions and what type of commissions we take here at the museum. We do some pretty amazing things, and some of the most impressive thing I've ever seen here at this museum is airplanes. Here we were commissioned to do airplanes at the museum, and I do want to show you this as this is going on down here at the museum on our top screen. We are going to change it up a little bit.
Fabricate a scale model float plane out of glass takes tremendous effort. Figuring out the exact proportions of the propeller, the length of the body versus the wingspan were all extremely difficult. The Legacy project started off as a collaboration between the Museum of Glass and the Murdoch Charitable Trust. We were commissioned to design and fabricate a glass airplane to commemorate Jack Murdoch. We started by overlaying 2 contrasting colors of glass that would later show the design elements in the plane. We're working with the glass at a temperature of over 1500 degrees. We create a small color cup to allow for a nice even distribution of color. The colored cup was then stuffed with clear glass to give us enough mass to make the body or the fuselage of the plane. Glassblowing is a team effort. Here at the Museum of Glass, we're unique in that this team has been working together for over 10 years. Each member of our team played a specific role in the creation of the plane. We use a variety of tools to shape and design the body. As you can see here, we're using some cork paddles to rough it out. The body is then transferred to yet another blowpipe so we can finish up the tail of the fuselage. Using those same cork paddles, we give the bottom of the plane a gentle curve before it's put away. After the plane is finished being formed, it's put away into an annealing oven to cool for several days. Once the fuselage was made, we moved on to making the pontoons. We decided we needed to fabricate a steel mold to allow us to make multiples. In order to have the pontoons match the plane, we used the same white color bar. This time, it is solid. The solid glass is then heated up to approximately 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's pressed into a steel mold. The pontoons are then put into another annealing oven to cool down. In our cold shop, the fuselage of the plane is now being ground or sanded down to remove any unwanted material. We then taped off the plane, and using our sandblaster, we revealed the tail numbers, the windows, and the pinstripes on the fuselage of the plane. The sandblasting process is often very rewarding, as the color is quickly revealed, bringing life to the aircraft. After being sandblasted, the planes were then returned to the cold shop to be cleaned up and polished. The wings, the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers were all water jet cut out of handmade sheet glass, again made from the same white color to match the body of the plane. Once the glass parts were finished, we fabricated a small steel structure to hold the pontoons to the body of the plane. The nose cone was turned on a lathe while the propeller was carved out of a sheet of steel to make a fully functional propeller. Now that we have all the parts of our plane, it was brought back to the cold shop where the assembly began. The vertical and horizontal stabilizers were notched out to fit the tail of the plane, while the wing was glued into place. The gluing process takes many hours. We start with 2 clean surfaces, apply the glue, and it sits for over 72 hours before a full cure. It was an honor and a challenge to work on the Legacy project for the Murdoch Charitable Trust.
So that's the only recycled glass we ever use here at the museum. Now, any glass that ends up on this ground is unfortunately thrown away. We can't recycle any of this glass because it comes contaminated with dirt or debris. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great afternoon. Now, the glass that we do recycle here goes into the specifically marked clear bins sitting next to the garage. This is the glass blowing part of glass making. Now, Gabe is standing on this side, getting ready to blow air through the blowpipe. We're blowing about 1 or 2 psi. It's about the same air pressure used to blow out a candle, but it does vary. Sometimes we're asked to blow soft, sometimes we're asked to blow hard. But to control the glass, we were using a wet padded newspaper down here, and there's nothing special about the newspaper we burn here. Any old newspaper will do, but here at the museum, the Wall Street Journal is preferred, but again, any old newspaper will do. We read it, fold it, drench it in water, poke holes in it, and burn right through it. It only lasts a couple days, but that's totally fine. We'll just recycle it and make a brand new pair. And notice this teamwork. That's what glassmaking is all about, the teamwork. Notice Sarah down here is what we call the pole turner. The pole turner's job is to give the adequate heat that the gaffer has asked for. We then have the first assistant, which is Sairi down here. Sairi is standing by for whatever our gaffer needs. It might be a shield, or it might be a tool. And then we have Gabe down on that end. Again, he's getting ready to blow air through that blowpipe. For those of us who are just coming in and wondering what we are making, we are working on a kids design glass. Every single month, we will choose a different winner from all of our participants have given us a drawing, have submitted a drawing to the Museum of Glass. And this program is available for any child 12 and under. Now, we've created the first piece already, and it's sitting in the annealer to take home. Now, that may be the one that our artist takes home, but we do need to create another one for our collection, and that's what we're working on here today. How we're going to break this piece free from the rod? Well, we've already established that small little constriction that we added, the small waist point, will be the break-off point. And that's how we're going to break this boat free from the rod we now have. We still have a lot of shaping to do before we really begin to see that shape and that design, but here in a little bit it'll all come together. So Ben has used a pair of cork paddles to squeeze the bubble, and this is going to give us our initial shape for our piece. Now, it may not look like this, but the bubble that we've created will be our boat. As of right now, it doesn't look like that, but it's totally fine. We are going to be transferring it onto a different rod. By transferring onto a different rod, we can give ourselves the ability to work on the opposite end and really make that boat-esque shape here on the transfer. Now, to do that, we're going to bring over a punty. The punty will be essentially the transfer, which will give us the ability to work on that top half. So down here, so as all this action's going on down on our top screen, we're gonna show you a toast in a boat so we can understand what the glass makers have been working on right now. Again, this is gonna be the boat that we're working on right now. It doesn't look like a boat quite just yet, but we are gonna continue to manipulate it, trim it, cut it, make it look like a boat, and then we will later add the mast and the little toast that will go inside of our boat. Again, this is brought to you by our Kids Design Glass. Once a month, we will put a day aside specifically to work on our Kids Design Glass program. Now this time around, we're using a different tool than we regularly use. Now, traditionally we will use what we call the jacks, which have steel blades, but this time we're using that similar tool, but this time with wooden blades. Now these are called par trophies, and we use them when we're trying to minimize the marks left on the glass. Since they're wooden, they will leave less marks than the steel one that will just essentially stab them. But the jacks that we use, we still slide on some beeswax. That beeswax prevents the glass from sticking to our tools. Rather, we're slipping and sliding on that top layer. Thank you for joining. So on our top screen, we are going to show our image once again of the toast in our boat. Now, the toast will need to sit on something. Now, in the drawing here, it's 2D, of course, but when we bring it into the 3D world here, we need to make some adjustments. The toast is elevated, and to help us out, we are creating a little seat that will sit in the boat, and that's where we will add the toast later on. We will also be adding that flagpole later on, but as of right now, we can focus on really creating that seat for the toast. So I do want to take a moment, and as we're talking about this, I know we have a lot of glass out here, and I spoke a little bit about it, but just to let everyone know what's going on with this glass is that we host an annual auction, our Red Hot event, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year here at the Museum of Glass. Now, that's going to be happening later in the year, around December, but we're already gearing up. Every year we'll make a special edition decanter and a special edition martini glass. So the martini glasses are sitting down on this end, and we will produce 50 of them, and we will sell those 50. Down on that right-hand side, we're seeing the decanters. We will produce a handful of these in the best 25. We're going to send them off to a local distillery, have them filled and corked. Then we also see wine bottles around the hot shop. These wine bottles will be sent to a winery, have them filled and also corked. And these ones, however, will be auctioned and not sold. And now if you're interested in getting your hands on some of these pieces, the only way you can get your hands on these pieces is if you come to our Red Hot event. Again, it's going to be happening later this year, but it's the biggest fundraiser the Museum of Glass hosts. So as we continue to work on our boat down here, we're going to add our toast here very shortly. I do want to show you some of the past Kids Design Glass pieces. So on our top screen, we are going to play a short video of our Kids Design Glass program so we can just kind of see some of the other pieces the Museum of Glass has made. So on our top screen now, let's look a throwback to all of our Kids Design Glass with on our top screen now, our video.
Baby monster. Pip is a baby monster that loves to smile and laugh. Even though he's little and cute, he gives a big cry. Also, Pip loves food, especially bananas. He will eat any speck of food in sight.
Totally amazing. And especially if the pieces of art go traveling around, other kids will see, oh my gosh, I could do that too. You know, it's not just somebody else that, you know, it's they did it, you know, I couldn't do that. Absolutely not. Anyone can do this. And I think that's what it shows the kids.
Maybe not everybody can win them.
But, and
I think it's gonna stand up there with one of the coolest things that a museum has ever done.
What is it, a cucumber all dressed up for a night on the town? That's pretty ridiculously funny.
The funnest part about this project is how fresh the ideas are coming from the kids who they have no idea of glass blowing techniques. They don't care.
Nobody saw this coming. We'd make one piece and it was given to the family. And then we realized, well, wait a second, there's something more here. We started to get more drawings, more interesting drawings, and it really kind of snowballed a little bit.
Bacon Boy was special. The hat almost looks like a frying pan.
Maybe he's wearing a frying pan.
Bacon. I don't really do any work when they present. It's bacon.
bacon, baby.
It's mine.
Oh, that's glass. Cool. Oh, I see.
How's that for his arm? Fingers?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it really brings it home and really shows that, you know, there's an artist in all of us, I think. So, and it's human nature to be creative. So I think we lose that as we get older sometimes, and it's cool to see this pure creative nature that children possess. So I think it's cool to share that with the rest of the world, hopefully. So.
Thank you for supporting Kids Design Glass.
Now, our Kids Design Glass program is available for any child 12 and under. Any of them can submit a drawing and a little description of their piece. But here today, we are working on another Kids Design Glass. Our artist this time is from our local community up in SeaTac. Now, Quan has already left the museum, but he was here for the first one when we made the first go around. And this time, we decided to approach it a little bit different. Instead of adding the toast first, we will be adding a mast, and then later the flag, and eventually bringing everything together. The mast will now be added, and we made that mast earlier here. We're using a mixture of different torches, but the hot torch we're using right now packs a punch. Now that torch is extremely hot. On contact, it's so hot that it can boil the glass if we're not careful. can even boil away the color. So we're very careful not to overexpose the glass. For all of our visitors who are just joining us again, my name is David. I'm going to be your MC here today. Now, as we continue to work with the glass, if you have a question at any given point, you can feel free to raise your hand or shout my name. I am more than happy to answer any question you might have about the glass blowing process. Now, once we are complete with this piece, now we still have quite some time to go, but after we're done, we are going to be giving a docent-led tour of our galleries. Now, if you're interested in having a docent, we have a wonderful Alina down here. She will be standing out by the donut, by the entrance with the gallery sign. If you're interested in touring the museum with a very knowledgeable docent, it's fantastic timing. Again, once we are complete with this piece, we will be giving a tour. I'll let everyone know once again, once we're towards that process, towards the end, I'll announce it all again. Now, one thing we are doing here is we're going to be adding a little bit of clear glass on the very bottom just to stabilize the mass, just so we don't see a lot of movement. Now, Sarah down here with the red t-shirt, she's brought out the toast that's going to be going in our boat down here, and we're using that torch to begin to heat up the area that the toast and the boat will be stuck together. Notice down here when Sarah exits with the toast, you'll notice that the very bottom portion has heat. You'll see that bottom portion red and orange. That red and orange means that there is heat there in that area, and with that heat, it's going to act like glue, so when it sticks to the boat, that red area, they're going to fuse together. Now with the little tap, it's broken free, and our toast has now met the boat. On our top screen, we are going to show you the image once again so we can understand what the team is working towards. Now we have most of the pieces already complete. What we are now doing is joining everything together. We still have a red flag to go on the very top of our mast. Now, of course, any child that comes to the museum or any child at all, 12 and under, can be part of this Kids Design Glass program. So if you're interested in being part of this, all you need to do is make sure you place or put an official entry form, and you can have the chance of having your piece being made here at the museum. Again, for any child 12 and under. So the colors that you're seeing right now will be very similar to the drawing, but as of right now, they are gonna look dark. That's just the heat distorting the true color of the glass, but it will be the color that our artist drew with. For the good majority of this portion, however, it will look this dark color, but rest assured by the end of the 24-hour cool down, the true colors will be coming back. So the next step we will take is to set our finished toast in a boat into the annealer. If you're sitting on this end, we're gonna be using this annealer down here. So you're gonna see a good view of both the first one make and the second one. Remember, they're unique in their own way. They have different differences because they are handmade. However, this oven is sitting at 920 degrees, and it's gonna be the home of our toast in our boat for the next 24 hours. Unfortunately, if we leave it out here, it'll get too cold too fast, and it can break, crack, and even explode. So if we want to prevent it from breaking, it will have to slowly be brought back to room temperature. Now, Sarah down here has suited up in a heat protective layer, and she's gonna wear some Kevlar gloves to break it free, and she will carry it to this annealer where it will slowly cool down. The reason why we do need to cool down the glass is because if we leave it out here, it'll just get too cold too fast. The molecules aren't gonna cool down evenly, and when that happens, it will cause the glass to stress, and ultimately the stress is what causes it to break. So we want to eliminate the stress by slowly cooling it down. the glory hole right now is about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature that the glass is being brought out is about 2,100. It looks like the team is complete on this piece, so we're going to torch it on the very end, and we're just going to snap it free by cutting it free. And success, our boat will now cool down for the next 24 hours. And can we give our whole crew a round of applause? And what a successful Kids Design Glass morning. Again, any child is eligible to participate in this program. All they have to be is 12 years and under to participate. But can we give our whole crew another round of applause? They did an amazing job down here. So I do want to give everyone a heads up. We are going to be taking our lunch break now. But however, I do want to let you know that down on this right-hand side, we have the Hilltop Artist students, and they're going to be teaching live glass making down here on this hot shop floor. And we do have one slot available at 4:15. So if you're interested in working with glass, coming down to the world-famous Museum of Glass, you do have the opportunity. We have available one slot for one person only to be coming down to the Museum of Glass at 4:45 or 4:15 to work with our wonderful students like Julian Goza down here, a sophomore at Wilson High School. He's part of their after-school program. Again, from everyone down here at the Museum of Glass, we want to thank you for joining us. We are also going to be giving a tour now of our galleries. If you're interested in and want to be led by one of our wonderful, knowledgeable docents, right now is a good time. She is waiting right outside of the donut. However, I think the Hilltop Artist students, they're going to be playing around with glass, so you can feel free to stick around. I'll stick around to answer some questions. What are we going to be doing after? Well, I believe we are going to be moving on to the pieces you see around the hot shop. Now we are gearing up for our Red Hot event, which is our biggest fundraiser that we host here at the museum. So these wine bottles that you see here will be auctioned off later on the year. Of course, we're going to send them to a winery first, have them filled, corked. The decanters you're seeing down here will be sent off to a distillery, corked, and then we will sell these. We will only produce 25 of them and only send 25 to be filled. The goblets that you see around the hot shop, we will only produce 50 of these, limited edition, and sell these on our Red Hot event. So if you're interested in owning one of these pieces, you will have to come to our Red Hot event happening the first week of December. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Again, I believe they're just going to be down here playing around with glass. They're really friendly people. We have Jack Spitzer. He's also a sophomore at Wilson High School, and we have Julian again. I'm going to hop off the mic, but if you guys want, you guys are more than welcome to stand here, talk to him if you would like. It's up to you again, your experience, but we do want to thank you for joining us in our morning half of the live glass blowing demonstration. Thank you.